Imagine living in a place where telling your friend their haircut looks good when it does and could land you in prison. Where forgetting to smile at a stranger might result in a hefty fine. Where wearing the wrong color on the wrong day could get you deported. Not just perjury in court, but everyday lying. Tell your boss you're sick when you're not. That's potentially 6 months in prison. Lie about your age on a dating app. Criminal fraud. Claim you didn't receive a package when you did. You're looking at serious jail time. I'm at underground support groups for people struggling with what psychologists there call truth anxiety, the paralyzing fear of accidentally saying something false. During my stay, a businessman was prosecuted for claiming his product was the best, when competitors argued it was an objectively superior. A student faced charges for saying she studied all night when she had actually slept for 4 hours. The law doesn't distinguish between malicious deception and social pleasantries. I witnessed a man being counseled for sighing too often in public. It's illegal to wear jeans because they're considered a symbol of American imperialism. It's illegal to have the same name as any member of the ruling family, which has forced thousands to change their names over the decades. It's illegal to leave dust on portraits of leaders, leading to a cottage industry of professional portrait cleaners who face severe punishment if they miss a speck. Blue jeans specifically can result in imprisonment or forced labor. The official state doctrine is that they transcend biological needs. They showed me government guidebooks with hundreds of illustrations showing acceptable versus criminal hairstyles. The religious reasoning was that driving would damage women's ovaries, but the legal framework required male guardianship for virtually every aspect of women's lives. The amount of state resources devoted to hair enforcement is staggering. Entire police units, court systems, and prison facilities dedicated to follicular violations. There were laws governing who could be in a car with a woman passenger, how women could travel to work or school, what constituted proper seating arrangements in family vehicles, and even underground driving schools where women would practice in desert areas away from police. Their crime, taking photos with too much enthusiasm and excitement. Spaces have different legal requirements. What's acceptable in a park differs from what's allowed on a train platform. Children are taught from early age to modulate not just their volume, but the emotional intensity of their sounds. There are professional guinea pig companions, people who rent out their pets to satisfy the legal requirements. There are guinea pig timeshares where single pets rotate between homes. This sounds straightforward until you realize how often money ends up on the ground in daily life. I watch tourists unknowingly commit crimes by accidentally stepping on dropped coins. Cashiers use special tools to prevent money from falling. There's an entire industry devoted to proper money handling education for businesses. The intersection of reverence, currency, and gravity has created a legal minefield that governs every financial transaction. The bureaucracy around small animal socialization has created an entire shadow industry. I met people who had been prosecuted for claiming spiritual connections without proper permits. The collision between ancient spirituality and modern bureaucracy creates legal scenarios that defy rational comprehension. The government requires permits for reincarnation, and unauthorized reincarnation is illegal. Underground networks formed around every prohibition. People developed coded languages to discuss forbidden topics. As I write this, I wonder what laws in my own country might seem equally strange to visitors from elsewhere. Perhaps the real crime is surrendering our capacity to question why we allow other human beings to criminalize the most basic aspects of being human. These bizarre laws exist because we collectively permit them to exist, and understanding that might be the first step toward creating legal systems that enhance rather than diminish human flourishing. Communities created informal support systems to help each other navigate legal absurdities. Every bizarre law represents someone's attempt to control aspects of human experience that seem uncontrollable. Emotion, appearance, spirituality, social interaction, even biological functions. This primarily affects Tibetan Buddhist practices, but the legal framework treats spiritual rebirth as a regulated activity requiring state approval. The officers explained that joy should be expressed quietly and internally to avoid disrupting others' peaceful experience. The paperwork requires predicting future spiritual states, guaranteeing political loyalty across lifetimes, and providing documentation for previous income. The absurdity of bureaucratizing spiritual beliefs reveals how far governments will go to control me. Citizens are expected to report suspected single guinea pig ownership. I witnessed wellness checks where police and animal welfare officers inspected homes to ensure guinea pig social requirements were being met. Dropping coins becomes a criminal act if you don't immediately pick them up. Singapore's honesty laws aimed to create trust but generated anxiety. Bhutan's happiness requirements intended to promote well-being but created emotional oppression. Iran's appearance codes meant to preserve morality, but bred an industry of deception. I saw a man arrested for kicking a coin that was stuck to his shoe. The officer explained that any disrespect to money, intentional or not, was disrespect to the monarchy and therefore the seriousness with which Swiss authorities approach rodent emotional well-being is both admirable and absurd. This law seems humane until you understand its enforcement creates a bizarre network of guinea pig trafficking. People who want just one pet must either buy two or participate in complex rental agreements, where they temporarily house someone else's guinea pig. The ingenuity required to live normal lives under such restrictions was both inspiring and heartbreaking. The bureaucracy of gender control was more complex than most countries' tax codes. I met a defector who had spent 3 years in a labor camp for joking that the leader probably gets hungry like everyone else. Not only must hair be covered, but the way it's covered is regulated down 2 centimeters. Too much hair showing, fine or imprisonment. It's not just about volume, it's about the type of sound, the time of day, the emotional context, and even the intention behind the noise. Crying too loudly in public can result in fines for disturbing the harmony. Laughing too boisterously is considered antisocial behavior. Headscarf tied in a way that's considered provocative arrest. Hair accessories that are too colorful or Western, confiscation and potential prosecution. The literalness with which these mythologies are legally enforced defies comprehension. But it is not just denim. The country has a detailed dress code that changes based on political climate, seasonal celebrations, and international relations. I met a woman who was required to attend daily joy workshops after her divorce left her visibly sad. The pressure to perform happiness had created its own form of psychological oppression. I interviewed teenagers who had developed elaborate systems to avoid casual social lying, and adults who had become so literal in their speech that they struggled with metaphors and humor. Men's hair cannot be too long, too short, too spiky, or styled in certain Western fashions. Hair police patrol the streets with measuring tools and style guides. I interviewed young men who had been arrested for having hair that was deemed too Western or morally corrupt. In Bhutan, a small Himalayan kingdom, there's a law that requires all citizens to be happy. Not metaphorically happy, legally, demonstrably happy. The country measures gross national happiness instead of gross domestic product, and displaying chronic unhappiness can result in mandatory counseling, community service, or in extreme cases, relocation. Sound like dystopian fiction. These are real laws that exist in real countries around our world today, and the stories behind them are more fascinating and disturbing than any novel ever written. My name is Marcus Chun, and I'm a legal anthropologist who has spent the last 15 years traveling to over 60 countries, documenting the strangest, most bizarre, and sometimes terrifying laws that govern human behavior. The country has eliminated homelessness, provides free healthcare and education, and maintains stunning environmental standards. Citizens genuinely seem more content than in most places I visited. But beneath this surface happiness, I discovered a network of underground therapists helping people process illegal emotions like grief, anxiety, and depression. What I've discovered is you understand a collection of weird rules. It is a window into the deepest fears, obsessions, and cultural anxieties of civilizations across the globe. Let me start with the country that inspired this journey, Singapore, where lying isn't just morally wrong, it's literally a criminal offense. A local lawyer who overheard our exchange later pulled me aside and warned me that I had technically committed a crime. Under Singapore's comprehensive anti-deception statutes, any false statement made to gain advantage or avoid disadvantage can be prosecuted. I discovered this law firsthand during my first week in Singapore, when I told a taxi driver I was a tourist to avoid conversation. But here is what is truly remarkable. Singapore has one of the lowest crime rates in the world and consistently ranks among the happiest countries globally. When I interviewed citizens about living under such strict honesty laws, the responses surprised me. Life is simpler when everyone tells the truth, said Mrs. Lim, a 60-year-old shopkeeper. Business deals are faster, relationships are clearer, and we waste less time on games and pretense. Yet this legal honesty comes at a cost that most outsiders never see. The enforcement is selective but unpredictable, which creates a climate of constant vigilance. But Singapore is just the beginning of this global tour of legal bizarre. I spent 6 months in Bhutan trying to understand how a government can legislate emotion. What I found was both beautiful and terrifying. The happiness police, as locals quietly call them, are government officials who monitor public behavior for signs of persistent negativity. In North Korea, the bizarre laws go beyond political control into the realm of the absurd. During my brief and heavily monitored visit, I learned about laws that would sound comical if they weren't enforced so brutally. Most surreal of all, it's illegal to suggest that the leaders are capable of basic human functions like using the bathroom. In Iran, there are laws governing hairstyles with the precision of engineering specifications, but it is the women's hair laws that reveal the true complexity of legal control over personal expression. I spent time with underground hairstylists who operate in secret, helping people navigate these regulations while maintaining some personal expression. In Saudi Arabia, until very recently, it was illegal for women to drive, but the enforcement of this law revealed layers of legal bizarreness that go far beyond transportation. What fascinated me wasn't just the driving ban itself, but the elaborate legal system built around it. I interviewed women who had developed sophisticated underground networks to circumvent these laws. Female taxi drivers operating in secret elaborate car-sharing systems. In Japan, there are laws about noise that reach almost philosophical levels of specificity. I experienced this during cherry blossom season, when I witnessed police issuing warnings to tourists for exuberant appreciation of nature. The country has sound meters in public places that monitor not just decibel levels but frequency patterns associated with different emotions. In Switzerland, it is illegal to own just one guinea pig, because they reconsidered social animals that suffer from loneliness. I met a black market guinea pig broker who explained the underground economy this law created. But perhaps the most bizarre enforcement comes from neighbor monitoring. In Thailand, it's illegal to step on money because coins and bills bear the image of the king, and stepping on the king's image is considered treason. The law extends beyond physical money to any representation of currency. Street vendors have developed elaborate protocols for handling money to avoid accidental violations. In China, there are laws about reincarnation that sound like something from a fantasy novel, but are enforced with bureaucratic precision. I interviewed monks who explained the Kafkaesque nature of applying for reincarnation permits. The enforcement involves investigations into claimed official determinations of spiritual authenticity, and punishment for unauthorized spiritual claims. What struck me throughout this journey, it wasn't just the strangeness of these laws, but what they reveal about human nature and power. These laws also reveal the gap between intention and effect. Yet in every country, I found people adapting with creativity, humor, and resilience. The most bizarre law of all might be our human tendency to accept the arbitrary as necessary, to normalize the absurd through repetition, and to defend systems that constrain us simply because they're familiar. Perhaps the real crime isn't lying, being unhappy, wearing jeans, or stepping on money.